Thank you for tuning in to Biblical Musings as we continue our study on Joshua. We are nearing the end of our study together, and we're nearing the end of the book of Joshua as well. We'll see here in chapter 22, which is where we'll be studying, that there's some interesting lessons that the nation of Israel has learned. Because here in chapter 22, we begin to see Joshua step back, not so much in the role as leader, but as the one who solves all the problems. You see, whenever a problem has arisen in the past in the book of Joshua, Joshua, the man himself, has been there to kind of step in as God's representative and solve the issue, to come up with all the answers, to lead in every situation. Well, now that the fighting is very much done for the most part, and the people of Israel, the various tribes, are beginning to settle down in the various cities and villages and rural areas, he's beginning to step aside and other men are beginning to lead. Joshua is getting older, and it's time for the next generation to begin to step up. Here in chapter 22, we get to see what this next generation has learned so far. I think it's a very interesting lesson. So without more ado, let's jump into chapter 22 and see how the tribes of Israel, the nation of Israel, is adjusting to their new circumstances. It begins in verse 1 and says, "Then Joshua summoned the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, and said to them, 'You have kept all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, and have listened to my voice and all that I commanded you. You have not forsaken your brothers these many days to this day, but have kept the charge of the commandment of the Lord your God. And now the Lord your God has given rest to your brothers, as he spoke to them. Therefore turn now and go to your tents, to the land of your possession, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you beyond the Jordan. Only be very careful to observe the commandment of the Lord, of the law, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, to love the Lord your God, and walk in all his ways, and keep his commandments, and hold fast to him, and serve him with all your heart and with all your soul.' So Joshua blessed them and sent them away, and they went to their tents. Now to the one half tribe of Manasseh, Moses had given a possession in Bashan, but to the other half, Joshua gave a possession among their brothers, westward beyond the Jordan. So when Joshua sent them away to their tents, he blessed them and said to them, 'Return to your tents with great riches and with very much livestock, with silver, gold, bronze, iron, and with very many clothes. Divide the spoil of your enemies with your brothers.' The sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh returned home, and departed from the sons of Israel at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan, to go to the land of Gilead, to the land of their possession, which they had possessed according to the command of the Lord through Moses." So with the fighting mostly done, the three tribes who took their possession on the east side of the Jordan, that being Reuben, Gad, and half of the tribe of Manasseh, are ready to return home. And Joshua gives them some instructions to remember the Lord, to be faithful, to love him always. And then he blesses them and tells them to return home and to enjoy their lives, as it were, to divide the spoil and to live and prosper. So they do so. Now, if you'll remember early in the book, Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh were some of the first ones mentioned as being responsible for making sure that their brothers, the other 10 tribes, would be able to get their possessions, because the whole nation of Israel was attacked by these two kings on the east side of the Jordan in the end of Deuteronomy and when Moses was in charge. And so they conquered that land, and then these tribes, Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh, asked Moses, Joshua's predecessor, saying, "Hey, I know we're headed to the promised land, but this land we just conquered, we like it. We have a lot of herds, a lot of cattle. This is what we want." And so Moses okayed it with God, and God was okay with it. And so they did so, with the caveat that they would cross first into the battle and help their brothers achieve a home for themselves, just like their brothers had helped them. And so now that that has been accomplished, they're ready to return home. And they indeed do so. However, they make one stop on the way before they go home. Let's see what that is. Let's keep reading in verse 10 through 12. It says, "When they came to the region of the Jordan, which is in the land of Canaan, The sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh built an altar there by the Jordan, a large altar in appearance. And the sons of Israel heard it and said, Behold, the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh have built an altar at the frontier of the land of Canaan in the region of the Jordan, on the side belonging to the sons of Israel. When the sons of Israel heard of it, the whole congregation of the sons of Israel gathered themselves at Shiloh to go up against them in war. Now, why this response? We have two actions that take place. Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, the tribes of warriors, as they go home to their families, decide to build an altar there on the Canaan side of the Jordan, on the west side. They build this big altar and then they cross over and they leave behind. When the rest of Israel hears about it, they assume the worst. It seems that there's no other response to take in their eyes. Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh have completely turned away from the Lord. They have decided to build an altar in direct rebellion to God's commands, and in their response, the only thing they could do is go to war against them, to wipe out the sin in their midst. And so we have one force that has completed their duty, it would seem. Everything is good. They're just returning home. And they take this action which the other group does not understand. They have no context, they have no understanding, and they can only assume that it's an act of complete and utter rebellion against the Lord their God. And they must take action against it. And so they begin to gather together to go to war with one another, to start a civil war among the tribes of Israel. Whether it's luck or the hand of providence, they decide to send out some leaders and make sure of what's going on before they act. And thank God they do. And so it says, the sons of Israel sent to the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh into the land of Gilead Phinehas, the son of Eleazar the priest, and with him 10 chiefs, one chief for each father's household, from each of the tribes of Israel, and each one of them was the head of his father's household among the thousands of Israel. They came to the sons of Reuben and to the sons of Gad and to the half-tribe of Manasseh, to the land of Gilead, and they spoke with them, saying, Thus says the whole congregation of Israel, What is this unfaithful act which you have committed against the God of Israel, turning away from following the Lord this day by building yourselves an altar to rebel against the Lord this day? Is not the iniquity of Peor enough for us, from which we have not cleansed ourselves to this day, although a plague came on the congregation of the Lord, that you must turn away this day from following the Lord? If you rebel against the Lord today, he will be angry with the whole congregation of Israel tomorrow. If, however, the land of your possession is unclean, then cross into the land of the possession of the Lord, where the Lord's tabernacle stands, and take possession among us. Only do not rebel against the Lord, or rebel against us by building an altar for yourselves, besides the altar of the Lord our God. Did not Achan the son of Zerah act unfaithfully in the things under the ban, and wrath fall on all the congregation of Israel? And that man did not perish alone in his iniquity. We talked as we begin about what lessons has this next generation of the sons of Israel learned. What lessons have they learned in this book, in this story of the conquest? They mention the rebellion at Peor, which happened before this conquest, but which would have been very fresh on their minds. And they mention Achan. They say, why? Why would you rebel against the Lord your God? Why would you build this altar? Is it not enough? Have not enough people died in rebellion? You remember Achan, don't you? Don't you remember how he acted unfaithfully in the things under the ban? And the whole congregation of Israel suffered. That man did not die alone in his iniquity. His sin didn't just touch him. It touched others as well. Why would you put at risk the whole nation of Israel by rebelling in direct contrast to God's commands with this altar? They also appeal and say, hey, if your land is unclean, if it's too far away from the tabernacle of God where you can come worship, then why not just move over with us? We'll give you land among ourselves to live in, to make sure that you're okay. You got to love their appeal here, their zeal for God. That's something many of us, I feel, have lost. It's a zealous nature for God, for His Word, for His righteousness. They're ready to go to war with their brothers out of zealousness for God. They're also ready to give their own possessions, their own land, in their zeal for God, to keep from having to go to war. So you got to love the 10 tribes here. You have to love. They have taken great notice of the lessons this book has given. They have learned from the mistakes of Achan. They've learned from the mistakes at Peor. And they have learned that sin does not just affect those who perpetrate it, but all who come in contact with it. And that if those 3 tribes are indeed in direct rebellion with God, it won't just affect those 3 tribes. It'll affect them as well later on. Maybe not at this moment, but later on it will. However, the 3 tribes, Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, respond. And this is what they say. It says, the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh answered and spoke to the heads of the families of Israel. The mighty one God, the Lord, the mighty one God, the Lord, He knows. And may Israel itself know, if it was in rebellion, or if in an unfaithful act against the Lord, do not save us this day. If we have built us an altar to turn away from following the Lord, or if to offer a burnt offering or a grain offering on it, or if to offer sacrifices of peace offerings on it, may the Lord Himself require it. But truly, we have done this out of concern, for a reason, saying, in time to come, your sons may say to our sons, what have you to do with the Lord, the God of Israel? For the Lord has made the Jordan a border between us. You sons of Reuben and sons of Gad, you have no portion in the Lord. So your sons may make our sons stop fearing the Lord. Therefore we said, let us build an altar, not for burnt offering or for sacrifice. Rather, it shall be a witness between us and you, and between our generations after us, that we are to perform the service of the Lord before Him with our burnt offerings and with our sacrifices and with our peace offerings, so that your sons will not say to our sons in time to come, you have no portion in the Lord. Therefore we said, it shall also come about, if they say this to us or to our generations in time to come, that we shall say, see the copy of the altar of the Lord which our fathers made, not for burnt offering or for sacrifice. Rather it is a witness between us and you. Far be it from us that we should rebel against the Lord and turn away from following the Lord this day, by building an altar for burnt offering or for grain offering or for sacrifice, besides the altar of the Lord our God, which is before His tabernacle. So in their response they say, they invoke the Lord's name and say, God knows what we have done. And let us make known to you what the reason for what we have done. They said, if we built this altar to offer sacrifice and rebellion against God, then don't spare any of us. Kill us all. Because that is not our intent. We built this altar not for sacrifice. We built it as a witness, a copy of the tabernacle altar where the true worship occurs. You see, out of concern that the Jordan River would be a boundary of the nation of Israel and a boundary of the 10 tribes looking out, that they would say, oh man, those tribes beyond the Jordan, they're not really part of us. They're not really part of the nation. They're not really part of the worship. They're not really part of the Lord's faithful. They said out of concern for that would happen in the future, we said, let's build us an altar here on this side, on the west bank of the Jordan, to point to in the future, so that our children, our sons and future descendants would know that we are a part of the worship and the nation of Israel, the Lord, the God of Israel. And they said, let's build this thing so that your sons won't say to our sons, what have you to do with us? What portion have you with our nation? You're different than us. They said, let's build this altar so your sons and our sons can see in the future that we're still one nation and we serve the same God. So you see, they built this altar not out of rebellion, but out of concern that they would fall away from the Lord. In their zeal to follow the Lord, They built this altar so that their sons and the future generations would be faithful. And the 10 tribes, in their zeal for following God fully, saw it as an act of rebellion. And we had this misunderstanding that so very nearly led to a civil war among the sons of Israel. Let's see the conclusion, and then we'll have some closing thoughts. It says in verse 30, "So when Phinehas the priest and the leaders of the congregation, even the heads of the families of Israel who were with him, heard the words which the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad and the sons of Manasseh spoke, it pleased them. And Phinehas the son of Eleazar the priest said to the sons of Reuben and to the sons of Gad and to the sons of Manasseh, Today we know that the Lord is in our midst, because you've not committed this unfaithful act against the Lord. Now you have delivered the sons of Israel from the hand of the Lord." Then Phinehas the son of Eleazar the priest and the leaders returned from the sons of Reuben and from the sons of Gad and from the land of Gilead to the land of Canaan and to the sons of Israel, and brought back word to them. The word pleased the sons of Israel, and the sons of Israel blessed God, and they did not speak of going up against them in war to destroy the land in which the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad were living. The sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad called the altar Witness, for they said, It is a witness between us that the Lord is God. I think we can learn lessons from both parties in this misunderstanding. From the 10 tribes, those who saw the altar and thought that it was an act of rebellion, we can learn that sin has real consequences. And that if we're not willing to confront the sin in our brethren, that it will spread to others, to our own children, to ourselves even. And that it will corrupt and destroy and lead to many lives being lost. And so we must be willing to confront the sin in our brother. We also learn that it's from the 10 tribes that it's always appropriate, it's always a good idea to make sure those whom you're about to confront are truly your enemies before you just go out and destroy them, whether that's relationally or otherwise. It's far too often, if it happens even once, it's too often, but all too often it seems, when we are zealous for something, that we destroy those who are actually on our side and not our enemies. It's so vital to ascertain that what we are fighting against is a true enemy and not a friend we've misunderstood. From the 3 tribes on the eastern side of the Jordan, we learn a very important lesson as well, that it's also so easy for the next generation to forget the faith that we have. That even if through all the lessons we learn and the life lessons and the faith lessons God teaches us in our life, those are so valuable. But if we don't memorialize and remember them for the next generation, then we ourselves will have benefited, but think of the benefit lost for the future. And our sons and our daughters and the future generations are at great risk of falling away if we do not adequately teach them the lessons we have learned, the faith we have learned, the words that God has given us. And so their wish was to memorialize and to put this altar as a witness so that their sons wouldn't fall away from the Lord, but they would always have something to point to say, that's the God we serve, and He's across the Jordan in our brother's land. That's where we worship. This lesson would be so very important for their children to learn. You have to keep reading in the Old Testament to see if they learned it well. So for us, our takeaway this week, we're nearing the end, is what lessons have we learned from the book of Joshua? I hope you've had some interesting insights as you've read and we've studied together. But it's not enough for just us to learn them. If you don't pass on the lessons you learn from God, whether you're taught by someone or you read it in His book, then it's not enough for you to just learn it yourself. You must pass it on, or its full power will not be felt. You'll be in danger of just being consuming yourself and not giving to others. So I would encourage you, whatever lessons you've taken away this week, whether from our Joshua study or whatever else you've been studying, to pass that on to someone else this week and this month as well. It's always appropriate to be zealous for the Lord our God, and it's always appropriate to pass on the faith we have to someone else.